Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
We're back. It's the Casa de Cavazos. Justin in Chicago, Nathan in Westwood, Texas, Ada in Harlingen, Texas, providing that Tejano connection to reality. How's it going? Nathan, I know you were in Dallas this past weekend and there was some drama up there.
Yes, there was. We were having a birthday party for my daughter at Dave & Buster's, and all of a sudden the coach got some notifications that there was an active shooter at NCA, which is kind of scary because we had just been there the day before.
And NCA, that's the National Cheerleader Association?
Yes, they were there for the championships. Didn't do so well, but I mean, it is what it is. But the following day, which was yesterday, Saturday, maybe before 1 o'clock, news started to come out that there was an active shooter at the event. Turns out it was just two parents who got into a fight and they dropped some poles and they must have sounded really loud and everybody panicked and ran out. They had a couple of injuries. I think the worst injury that happened was somebody broke a leg. Over 30,000 people trying to stampede out of this area.
What compels you as a parent to get into a fist fight with another parent at an event for your children?
Yeah, I definitely didn't think that would ever happen at a cheer event, but maybe it'll actually make them ramp up their security, which, to be honest, we've been there twice. There's literally no security in that place at the Kate Bailey Hutchinson Center. Anybody can walk in off the streets. There's no security checks. Thank God there was not an actual shooting, and hopefully it makes them rethink their security going forward.
Yeah, did your daughter have a great time at Dave & Buster's? Did she win any prizes?
They had a great time. It was a surprise birthday party after she had told us we didn't love her all week because her birthday was on Tuesday and she had practice. And apparently they had made this whole party and told all their friends that we had 2 Teslas and that we were going to roll out the red carpet and take the whole team to Target and Urban Air, like after the 9 p.m. practice on Tuesday.
What the heck? Where did they get the idea that that was going to happen?
They just rolled with it. So all the parents were like, oh, wow, these 2 parents are extreme.
And the parents were going to be okay with them going to Urban Air at 9 p.m. for like 1 hour?
No, they were kind of like, are you sure? Like, no, it's happening. And apparently at some point even there was going to be a party bus.
That's crazy. What about you, Ada? What have you been up to?
This month is 1 year of working with a personal trainer. And also, this past Thursday, I played doubles with some other women, which this is the second time I've done it. So it just made me reminisce about my fitness journey and how some people tend to hate on me because they are men and don't realize what I'm going through.
Who could that be?
Nathan. I've had pregnancy-related changes to my body. I'm having hormonal fluctuations. I highly suspect estrogen level decline. Despite that, I've continued to work out, run, and I actually am pretty good at tennis when I play with these people. And they are surprised that I'm 43 years old. They tend to think I'm 33 years old. I'm continuing the fitness journey. It's not a phase. And I'm actually doing pretty well for myself, despite some hating.
So is there anything that you can do now that you couldn't have done a year ago?
Well, in August of 2023, I started running again. And in order to run 1 mile, I had to stop and walk 12 times.
Jesus.
So I definitely can run a mile now without stopping, multiple miles without stopping. And I'm a lot stronger for sure. Definitely doing more weight than I was doing in March of 2024. So things are improving. It's a lot harder. And I anticipate that I'll continue to have struggles along the way. But I'm kind of counteracting the aging process, and I'm not doing too bad for myself.
So are there any goals you have for year number 2?
The goals would just be to get a 6-pack, which I've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Of beer?
And no, a 6-pack on my abdomen. And to get better at running.
You got to sign up for those halves already.
I'm going to sign up for the Las Vegas half marathon in October, apparently.
Oh, you heard it. It's official. Once it's
been
on the
official.
pod.
It's been official.
It's official. I have a little update for myself, too. I released some music this past week. 2 tracks. One of them sounds like country, and one of them sounds a little bit like Santana-style stuff. So Check that out. The band is called Justin Cavazos y los Mundanos. For people who know why I use that word, they get a great sense of enjoyment out of it. We had a release show on Friday, played with a couple of good friends of mine, really awesome musicians. And at the end of the show, as we were getting off the stage, I also had them play the Casa de Cavazos pod theme.
Oh, nice.
I think the only person who knew was my wife. I looked at her in the audience and she just shook her head.
That's funny.
Yeah, so check it out. It's streaming on all the platforms, just like the pod. Apple, Spotify, Tidal, iHeart, all that. All right. So now that we've got the updates out of the way, I know we want to talk about the depressing nature of our American reality. So to take that away, I'll hand it over to Ada.
Why did you sound so depressed? I don't sound depressed.
So I'm just like looking at these notes about what we're going to talk about. I'm like, man, this sucks.
Again, I'm the happiest pissed off person that you can possibly meet. So this week, one of the things that was brought up is that Republicans are looking to cut Medicaid. So apparently they're looking to make massive cuts, which will affect children, some mothers, people who are in poverty, and even people who need nursing home care. So apparently about 60% of nursing home care is covered by Medicaid. It's super expensive. It's like close to $100,000, if not $100,000 to have a year in the nursing home. So I listened to Bill Maher or watched Bill Maher and read about this. And I think that we definitely need to make it clear that this is bad. But at the same time, this is why we lose. It's definitely bad that people will be losing coverage if the Medicaid cuts do go through. And I think some people will note that and they will potentially vote for Democrats in the future if they see that the Republicans make major cuts that affect their kids, themselves, family members that are in nursing homes. But I have talked to a lot of people over the years, and honestly, I see a lot of people who are okay with Medicaid being cut. Because what they see is they see people that to them are getting all this free health care. And then they themselves are seeing that they can't afford health care, even though they're employed, even though they have maybe insurance through their job. So we also need to focus on these other people. And why is healthcare so expensive for everyone? Why are the deductibles so high? Why are you getting bad healthcare for what you pay?
It's this for-profit system.
Well, I think that we eventually need to get out of the for-profit system. We're not getting a great product for what we pay for. And then people are making decisions where they are foregoing healthcare even though they have insurance because the costs are so high, even with insurance. High deductibles, high copays. I work in a setting that is a private ER where pretty much everyone has private insurance. Or they're self-pay, but for the most part, it's private insurance. And I've had situations recently where people who have money, who have private insurance, they don't want to get the proper health care because they can't afford it. Like they don't want to be admitted when they need to be admitted to the hospital. They may not even want to get the proper workup because they're like, okay, well, if you order the CT scan to rule out appendicitis, my bill's going to be really high. So I don't know if I want you to do that because the bill's going to be really high. So what if it's not appendicitis? And then I'm saddled with this massive bill.
Have any of you been on Medicaid, CHIP, any of those programs?
I don't think that we were on Medicaid or CHIP growing up.
I was, for sure.
Yeah, you were. So what were you going to say about that, your experience?
I'm just trying to think about what my life would be like if we didn't have that.
Right.
I mean, I think about parents who can afford to take their kids to the hospital or to the clinic whenever they're going through something that's pretty concerning, right? And I don't know, there was like one time where I had food poisoning. I was just throwing up everything to the point that I needed an IV. And I had a couple of asthmatic episodes that were pretty intense. Is there a world where, because we couldn't afford it, we just tried to ride it through? And maybe even if it turned out okay, maybe there would be some long-lasting damage from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we definitely need to help people. But at the same time, people that are looking from the outside in are seeing someone like you getting all that free healthcare. And well, if they had the same problem, they'd have to worry about it and wonder if they need to get the care because they don't want to get a $10,000 bill. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of resentment. And I feel like there's just a lot of resentment throughout the entire country related to a lot of different things.
Yeah. I do think that the healthcare resentment is correct. It's correct to have the healthcare resentment because the system does suck, but it's often misplaced.
Right. Right. So it's placed towards people like you, people who have CHIP, people who have Medicaid, where the real issue is the profiteering, the insurance companies, the out of control costs, that kind of thing.
How much of a reduction are they proposing? Are they trying to cut it all out?
I think it's around $880 billion. And it's very vague right now because they need to do more as far as figuring out how they're going to cut it. But that's like their general number, that they want to get around $880 billion of cuts.
Is there any plan for a replacement program?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of saying that, oh, these Medicaid people don't work. They're just like getting free care and free things and they don't deserve them.
I think we should all have health care. But, I mean, the whole insurance industry in the U.S. is kind of this whole boondoggle where it's bleeding everyone dry. There's so many middlemen. But you'll never see the healthcare insurance industry act like auto insurance, where you have good driver discounts, where if you don't get in accidents and you take care of your vehicle and you show a clean record of driving, you're eligible for lower rates. Healthcare would never do that. Private healthcare would never do that. If you showed that you had a clean bill of health, that you were part of a lower risk group, that your rates would go down.
Yeah. Well, and also other things with the car insurance system is you have a lot more manageable deductibles. I'm looking at my policy today that I got through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, and I have a $7,500 individual deductible and a $15,000 family deductible when you include my daughter in it. That's because I decided to go with like the cheapest policy, which was $528 a month. And the reason I went for that is because for the most part, we don't really use medical services. Like I am able to evaluate my daughter for most things. And really she just goes in for checkups once a year. But looking at the policy I have, like it's not very good. It looks like for an ER visit, I'd have to pay my deductible of $7,500. And then after that, they would only cover 50%, 50. That's something that makes you think a little extra hard about, should we go to the ER for this?
Well, that's kind of what happened when I had the foot surgery. I was looking if I had insurance at the time. I was like, I kind of would have paid the same or more. And so I just went out of pocket at that point. I was like, well, the deductible would have been this much. And who knows what they would have charged the insurance. It's conceivable we might have even paid more having insurance.
Well, I will say that the one thing that health insurance does help with is that they'll negotiate down the price. So having that price negotiated down can help. But at the end of the day, you still pay a lot for not much in terms of services.
Well, they have to negotiate down. Isn't the billing for medical really high because they know the insurance is going to come back with a really low number?
Yeah. It all doesn't make sense. And then if you go in as a self-pay, they try to charge you the number that they would have tried to charge the insurance. So they don't give you the insurance discount. It's crazy.
But they definitely saw me faster once they knew I was private pay.
Well, when you go through insurance, there's usually like prior authorizations that are involved, especially if a surgery is going to be involved.
Oh, but going back to what you guys were saying about that stigma that people on Medicaid don't have jobs. I mean, that also goes to the other issue where the bar for getting Medicaid is very hard for like a normal person to get it. You can just have like a regular like 9-to-5 minimum wage job and you still don't qualify. So it gets to this point too where some people are not going to want to make more money if all of a sudden they lose their insurance.
Well, and then those people that are right at the edge and don't qualify are rightfully pissed off that they can't get health care. And then they see these other people that are getting health care and don't have to worry about anything. Like they can go to the ER and not have to give a copay or anything.
Yeah, I feel like there needs to be some kind of committee that works to legislate some kind of balancing of this out. How much do you need to raise that maximum income to qualify? And how do you put in safeguards so that people who aren't in this in-between place are not screwed over by super high premiums and super high deductibles to get even worse healthcare than someone who is receiving Medicaid?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're going to have to get close to single payer, maybe not fully single payer, but like, for example, Germany has a mostly government administered health insurance, and you can pay into it. So we should have a system where we can pay into Medicaid or Medicare at affordable prices with minimal or low deductibles and where they can control costs.
I've heard that Mass Health, the Massachusetts marketplace, is pretty good.
Yeah. Is that mostly government administered insurance or is it mostly private?
Mass Health is government, state government.
Okay.
What's the single payer? What do you mean by that? What is that?
Single payer would mean that basically the government would pay. So you could get like a Medicare, Medicaid system where they're basically paying all the doctors and the hospitals and the pharmacies as well, nursing homes, whatever care you need.
Of course, nobody would ever go for that here, though, because that's probably going to raise taxes.
I think that there's a way to get there, but it's going to involve years and it's going to involve working on things at multiple levels.
Raising the minimum wage?
That's one thing that would help. But I also think that we do have a health problem in this country. I think we need to teach people from kindergarten through 12th grade how to take care of themselves, have real physical education when people go to school, teach them how to cook, how to take care of their nutrition. I also think that cities need to work on having a walkable city so people can move around more. There are a lot of different things that can be done. And then we have to get to a point where we get away from profit and try to wean off the insurance companies. You can certainly have a private option for people who want that private option, but we should aim to get most of the care through one payer so that way it can also be more efficient and we can control costs better.
How would you propose making a city like Harlingen more walkable?
So I think you'd have to look at all the different areas throughout the city and see where you can build like some nice sidewalks, some parks that feed into the sidewalks, that kind of thing. You'd also want to increase the ability to bike safely. I feel like a lot of areas here are not very safe for biking. So you want some type of setup where you can walk and bike safely, and maybe it feeds into parks where you can walk around and hang out with your family, have a picnic or whatever.
Yeah, Brownsville seems to be more robust about that. There's a ton of biking paths and walking paths that feed directly into parks, cultural areas.
Yeah, and I also think that heat is an issue here. So you may want to consider also what you can do so that people are willing to go outside and not be at risk of heat exhaustion, heat strokes. So you may want to build like some very heavily like wooded areas as well,
Yeah,
where
or
people
like
can get some coolness.
Shaded walkways or arcades. That was something that I noticed being in Bologna in Italy for a day. It's kind of known for all of its arcades. There's a bunch of covered walking paths. So rain or shine, if it's super hot or if it's really coming down, a lot of the places you can walk are covered on those sidewalks. Plus, it also means that it's safer because it's also separated out more clearly from traffic.
Yeah. And somewhere like here too, where there are places where you're going to have to cross like frontage roads or the expressway, like maybe you have to create like some kind of elevated pathway as well.
Or underground.
You can walk through. Or underground. That's a good idea too.
Like in Montreal, opposite problem, extremely cold in the winter. They have a decently robust pedway system. So even getting to a couple of different spots, like you just go underground, it's way warmer, and then you can access your public transit from down there too.
And there's a lot that can be done that I think is not that expensive. Other things I have ideas about are medical education. I think we need to make it easier to put out good MDs and DOs. I think that we should go to like a foreign type of system where you go directly into med school rather than having to spend 4 years in college. That would be a lot cheaper. for the doctors themselves. And that would put out doctors quicker as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that we need to find a way to like retrain physicians who are burnt out, who might be willing to do primary care, maybe a fairly quick process of retraining where they can do primary care as well.
Do you think there's some kind of hybrid system where we do keep the 4-year medical schools? Say, for example, if someone knew that they're going to be a doctor straight out of high school, they could go to that 6-year option. But there are a lot of people who come in from different industries, say finance, law, performing arts, or whatever, that they decided they want to become a physician. So they've already had some work experience. They've maybe taken some courses for some prereqs, and then they can do those 4 years after having done a whole different career before that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ideas that we could come up with. There's not really a reason why you need to make people go to college for 4 years. I essentially did my own 6-year BS MD program just by finishing college in 2 years and going straight to med school. And there used to be a few more that were like actual BS MD programs where you got accepted and you would get your bachelor's in MD within the 6 years. But I don't really think there are that many, if any, right now. So people have already tried that and it works. You can do a 6-year BS MD program. I feel like it should be, the majority of the programs should be a 6-year BS MD program.
Do you feel like any of that would be possible under the current administration?
Well, I'm not sure that they are even looking into that. And that's why I think that we need a lot more doctors running for office who have ideas like this, who've been through it, and who kind of know how to fix the system just by personal experience, extremely valuable personal experience that we have.
Nathan sent over this article about the Trump administration and what they call patrimonialism.
What stood out to me is just the way the government's being run and the way it talks about how, well, I'll go back to the Project 2025, which I've told you I've looked at a couple of times. And it's talking about how this form of government doesn't really look for anybody that has any experience. It's basically looking for people that are his friends, people that are going to say yes. And it eventually gets to the point where it either comes apart because of incompetence, which we're already seeing, or it actually turns into a full-on authoritarian regime.
Well, I think the article also pointed out that, like, pointing out that they're corrupt is one thing, and we could definitely do that, pointing out that there's corruption in the Trump administration. But people have already been seeing this, and they kind of don't care. I mean, Trump got elected despite it being very clear what he was going to do.
Was it very clear when they maintained that they knew nothing about the plans that he's been implementing so far? Like, even candidates down here in our area, Myra Flores, claiming she never even heard of Project 2025, yet is celebrating some of the things that are happening that are directly from Project 2025.
That's gaslighting and abusiveness from the right wing, because from watching the speeches, from hearing what they were saying, it was pretty clear this was going to happen. And people wanted it. So that brings up another topic. Are our people just kind of bad people that like this? Do we have a lot of bad people who like this?
I don't think it's bad people. I think people are scared. They're told that they're enemies, or that someone else getting certain benefits works to actually put them down, put their families in danger, and put them in overall worse financial situations. We've talked about this before in the pod, right? It's the playbook. It's the elites pitting people against each other in order for them to have that enemy and not actually pay attention to how the big companies and the people with a lot of money are stealing from their own pockets.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to work from multiple different theories in order to win elections going forward and make a difference. I think there could be some people that are very selfish and don't care about other people. But then, like you said, there are other people who are scared and they're being pitted against other people. So we have to work from all the different theories and figure out a way forward and how to get our ideas out there.
Well, going back to the article, I was remembering that part of this type of governing, the person in charge tries to act like it's their own personal business, Like it's their family that this is happening to. And I guess that's what kind of is resonating with all the supporters. They feel like he's talking to them like, yes, this is also happening to my family. And they feel that he's directly talking to them, which in fact is not. Like Justin said, like basically making you turn a blind eye to what they're actually doing, which is giving all the cuts to the rich people, getting wealthier himself, but at the same time, like having you believe that they're on your side and that everything's being taken away from you. Doesn't make sense how people can't just look the other way and see what's really going on.
Well, there's a lot of disinformation and people are in certain echo chambers, and that makes it harder.
It's just the way he talks. And I've heard this down here where we are. People say like that he's so authentic. You know he's not lying because he sounds like a normal person. And to me, that's like, just because of the way he speaks, that's it. That's all it takes. Because he doesn't sound like a politician. But to me, it's always been that the politicians sound a certain way because they have to deal with a lot of things that most people are never going to read. Like they have to make decisions for all of us. I mean, they can't just be out there and just like winging it.
I don't know, man. I know a lot of people who talk normally who are big fucking liars.
But the thing is that we do have to deal with this reality. And in order to make change, in order to win elections, we're going to have to deal with this reality and see how we're going to combat it. I was listening to the American Cholo podcast recently. It was something that was brought up by the LA Times because these are Hispanic people who have essentially gone for Trump now. And one of the things that they were so excited about was, oh, this president has done so many things in 1 month. There was no real like analysis of whether or not it was good. It was like, he's done so much. It's like, okay, but so much, but it's damaging.
A lot of it probably illegal.
Right. I also thought it was interesting that the American Cholo guy, Gil Tejada, did a pod on the Zelenskyy Trump meeting. And he was showing his reaction while he was watching the tape. And he was like happy about it. Like he thought that Zelenskyy was very disrespectful. He kept on calling Zelenskyy a fool. That was his reality, that he's completely in for Trump and he's completely in for America first. And this little narrative that Zelenskyy was disrespectful.
Yeah, I'm hearing all over the place that the perception is that Zelenskyy was baited into reacting the way that he did. You know, it is life or death for him and his people. And to have these little questions and complete lies to his face, misrepresentations about the way that he's acted and the things that he's said before, you know, like who wouldn't get passionate about it? Who wouldn't confront someone about that?
And apparently Vance had already kind of premeditated this because there's some articles that were stating that he had actually said during like the campaign that he wishes Zelenskyy would thank the United States. And that's exactly what he tried to get him to do. Like they just wanted him to bend the knee, basically. We already know this, like these modern times, nobody's really going to bow down to you. Like his country's in a war. People are dying. He doesn't have time for these games. Even when Trump's like, you don't have the cards. He's like, I'm not playing cards.
Yeah. So I watched the whole thing after initially watching the clips. So I watched the whole 49-minute meeting that was on C-SPAN. Thought it was interesting that about 12 minutes in, a reporter asked Zelenskyy why he's not wearing a suit. And so that's a whole part of their little narrative, that he wasn't wearing a suit and he's disrespectful and he should have worn a suit, which is bizarre. Zelenskyy answered by saying, well, after the war's over, I'll wear that costume. I'll wear the suit costume, maybe even a better suit than you. So after that, he actually still kind of kept his composure. And it wasn't until like the last 10 minutes that it starts to just unravel. And I didn't see anything that to me looked disrespectful. I think part of it too is the language barrier. And so sometimes when you have an accent and you're trying to speak English and you're not the best at it, maybe it can sound a little abrasive. But he was trying to explain what was going on, the facts of what was going on. He was trying to explain that Putin is a murderer and a dictator. And then somehow it went off the rails about how he was disrespectful and should be more thankful. I thought it was super embarrassing for us as a country. I thought Vance and Trump started to act horribly and like bullies. And that was a bad look for us as a country, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
people all over the world in many different governments have all said that they support Ukraine, and some have gone as far as actually being vocal about what they thought about how our leadership acted. But the only people who were supportive of it outside the country, Russia, Hungary, India, these countries that have these ideologues and authoritarian leaning proclivities among them.
I think it was just a show. He's a fake tough guy, and he gets his supporters to see, like, look, he's standing up for us, and really he did nothing. All he did was have him leave and accomplish what?
I didn't feel like it was standing up for us. I felt like it was super embarrassing that people at that level, at the highest level, are acting like bullies, acting abusive, saying that he's not wearing a suit, saying that he's not grateful enough when he's been grateful. He's said thank you many times. And then later they try to start with the gaslighting. Well, Biden also complained that he was not grateful. Okay, well, Biden got frustrated with him during a private call in 2022 and didn't televise it. He just said, you should be grateful after I've already given you this and now you're asking for more.
What is the narrative right now that high-ranking Democrats blew up the deal?
Yeah, so someone made that up. And apparently now with this disinformation environment that we're in, some random tweeter who just speculates can get amplified to the point where a U.S. attorney is now posting that Vindman and Susan Rice and a couple other people advised Zelenskyy to reject Trump's deal in violation of the Logan Act.
So what was the origin?
It was some random tweeter. It's like not even a real name with these people. Peachy Keenan. And the handle is at Keenan Peachy. I am speculating, but obviously I'm correct. Obama probably on too. This got amplified by a user by the name of Amuse. Like the word amuse. And then this got amplified further to the point where it then went to the U.S. attorney, Edward Martin, I think. He said, concerning, no one is above the law except Trump.
Of course, if you're saving the country, you're above everything.
So after this Zelenskyy Trump meeting that I thought was disastrous and embarrassing for our country, the cabinet came out and started posting that they were so proud of Trump for standing up to Zelenskyy. Then you have your usual idiots that are essentially backing Trump as well. So Ted Cruz on his podcast started saying complete garbage. What I will tell you is that President Zelenskyy showed up in the Oval Office and decided he was there to battle Trump, decided he was there to insult Donald Trump, decided he was there to attack and belittle Donald Trump. He had one job. His one job was to go there and to try to get the president's support for a peace that leaves his country in a good and strong position. And apparently he decided that he knew better than everyone else and that President Trump should be kissing his ass.
I don't think these guys are idiots, man. I think they know exactly what they're doing.
Well, yeah, of course they know exactly what they're doing. They know what their base wants. And that's exactly what they wanted. That fake strongman showing that everybody's going to respect us now.
Kissing Trump's ass is the best way to get even closer to him.
I don't know. Remember that Rush Limbaugh died from believing his lie that smoking wouldn't do anything to him. So I feel like they're believing at this point, and that's kind of dumb. He also stated about you're wearing a sweatshirt for Pete's sake. It's the Oval Office of the White House, the office of the President of the United States. Put on a freaking jacket and tie, wear a suit. So for some reason that continued to be a thread as well, that he was very disrespectful from what he was wearing, which is ridiculous.
Is there a formal White House dress
why
code?
didn't they care about what Elon was wearing during that press conference?
Exactly.
No tie,
T-shirt.
hat.
Charlie Kirk stated, President Trump and J.D. Vance just rightfully put that ungrateful foreigner in his place. You do not come into our Oval Office and lecture us. Huge mistake. Zelenskyy must resign immediately for the sake of his country if there's going to be a way forward.
I mean, if anyone was lecturing, it was Trump and Vance.
Exactly.
Anybody can see that.
Abusiveness, gaslighting 101 with the Trump administration, with the Republicans, with the right-wing media. I mean, I feel like I know a lot about abusive relationships, unfortunately, but the parallels are constant.
Well, I don't know. People are just like taking this at face value when some of these politicians just straight up saying that Russia isn't so bad. We might be hearing soon that they're just going to straight up say that Russia's an ally
Yeah.
for us, even though we're not that far removed from actual released information about Russian disinformation campaigns to affect
Well,
our
didn't you see
elections.
that Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that maybe we're all just poisoned by Hollywood, saying that Russia's evil?
Oh my God. I have a couple things to say. During the meeting, Trump did bristle that Zelenskyy kept saying that Putin is bad. He's like, well, you're saying a lot of negative things about him. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm on both sides. I'm on the U.S.'s side. I'm not aligned with you, and I'm not aligned with Russia.
Sounds exactly like a Trump supporter. I'm not for him, but I'm not for the other side. But that side's really evil.
Yeah.
Well, Europe is already trying to forge forward with their own alliances. They're trying to figure things out. And I don't know, I think this is worse for world security in a lot of ways. I think a lot of reliance on the U.S. for defense comes with its own set of problems. But in terms of like nuclear deproliferation, of having fewer nuclear warheads in the world that could lead to total annihilation of our civilization, having fewer people with all the bombs is a lot nicer. But because of all this distrust in the U.S. government, countries like France have gone forward with more development into their nuclear programs. The nuclear proliferation is going to increase because people are going to find that they can't rely on any of these countries. So each of these countries are going to stockpile even more and more.
That's why I think they were getting upset when Zelensky's telling them, like, you're going to feel this over here if you decide like to bail on us, which is essentially saying, and it's what Trump doesn't understand, is like, you want to go on this American isolationism. If we stop helping other people, it is going to get back to us no matter what Trump says. Like, oh, you can't tell us what we're going to feel. It's like, he's not trying to tell you what you're going to feel. He's trying to tell you that there is going to be some effects over here, whether you want to believe it or not. This is exactly what you're talking about, Justin, about the increased nuclear programs for other countries.
So after Tucker Carlson started with his usual misinformation, some people were posting that he had a video about how Ukraine is very corrupt and that they're selling like 50% of the arms that we're giving them to like Mexican cartels and other people. So right away, it's like trying to make Ukraine the bad guy. Even though I looked it up and there's not really evidence that they're selling 50% of the arms to other countries. I'm sure there's some corruption, like there's corruption everywhere, right? But I don't think that they're the bad guy. I don't think Ukraine is a bad guy overall.
Do you think Donald Trump is corrupt?
Absolutely.
But in what way?
So he's essentially acting like a mob boss, right? So he is giving advantages to anyone who's willing to give their loyalty, who's willing to give him favors. And ultimately, probably whoever's paying him, giving him contracts or giving him deals, his family as well.
Well, that's exactly what the other article you sent was talking about with Charlie Kirk at the end, how like all these tech billionaires all of a sudden went on his side. And so I think in the article even says that he doesn't really know if they like came around, but it's good to have them because now that they're on their side, they can say whatever they want on social media and it was really going to help them. And they were right.
Well, that brings us back to Doge, right? Because Elon is cutting all these things and quite haphazardly, but he's not cutting anything that's going to himself, that's going to SpaceX, it's going to Tesla.
Of course not. I mean, are you the one that shared that he had actually told Obama that there was too many regulations?
Yes, I actually wrote a paper that started with that in the story because that has been his goal the entire time, to deregulate so he can do his things faster.
Yeah. What's also scary is as things get deregulated and a lot of these institutions get dismantled, it's kind of the tech playbook. It's the large corporation playbook. You take over and you kneecap your competition within that space just so that your product becomes the more viable option. It happened with something like, let's say, Lyft and Uber, rideshare services. You go in and you disrupt the industry by cutting prices on a whole bunch of stuff that is way below the cost and you're actually losing money on it. But you're destroying the taxi industry because people are always going to pick the cheaper option. And then you increase the prices over time because that whole industry has been destroyed and now you're making way more money. The idea being, say, if you get rid of regulations in the FAA, you start firing a bunch of workers who work for the aviation industry within the government, and you say, look how terrible it is. Well, we should just go private. That's going to be the best way forward for us. Let's give SpaceX some contracts on this. That's the playbook, to destroy it from the inside so that people can say, yeah, it is terrible. It's always been terrible. Nothing has changed. So we should go private, and then we'll make them more money.
Well, SpaceX basically has the monopoly at this point. Even before this administration, they have the most rocket capability. They have the most satellites up there. So that was already a dangerous situation for us. And it's getting worse now.
Yeah, I don't even think he cares about Tesla at this point because he's on the inside and he can just award himself whatever he wants. Trump's going to give it to him.
But if there's a conflict of interest,
Are you sure?
Elon will know. He'll recuse himself.
It's been a conflict of interest since the second he got in there.
Well, I'm not sure he doesn't care about Tesla because I don't know if it was today, but he tweeted recently that Tesla's going to have a 1,000% profit increase in the next 5 years.
Well, yeah, of course the government's going to pay for it.
I just want to ask those people that claim that we can't afford anything, we're going to become communists and we're going to be bankrupt if we help kids or people that need help, how we can afford to pay this much for Tesla and Starlink and SpaceX.
And then what, he's also taking over the FAA?
I'm not really sure the details on that, but yeah, he's trying to make some changes there.
The details are that he's saying that the system's extremely outdated and that his system would be way more secure.
Oh yeah, Starlink versus Verizon, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah. All I can do is shake my head right now.
Another direct line to the Treasury.
So it's okay to give tax cuts to billionaires. It's okay to give more money to people who are already insanely rich. But it's not okay for us to help people that could potentially become very healthy citizens, very productive citizens with the help that they receive.
Food prices aren't coming down.
Whoa.
Are they coming down over there for you?
I don't think so. But honestly, like, I don't really check the prices. I'm pretty bad about that.
When we were down in Texas, I remember we were at H-E-B and we saw someone pass by where the eggs are, consider it, shake his head and move on. He decided not to go with the eggs.
That reminds me, I did read about Walmart saying that they're seeing that people are not really able to afford, that they're seeing like the end of the month, people are buying more like small packs of food and not so much food at the end of the month because they're running out.
Yeah. And there's so many things at play here. I mean, some of it is the mismanagement of the bird flu. Some of it is the striking fear into migrant workers who might be part of that agricultural economy.
Yeah.
Well, going back to what you were saying about if we're okay with giving all that money to the billionaires, you do realize that some of this base, and I don't know how much of the base believes this, they're like, well, that's fine because these billionaires, these companies are the ones employing the majority of the country. So of course we're okay with it because they're going to give us more jobs. They're going to give us more money.
It doesn't work that way. It has never
down.
freaking worked that way. Ever. Not once in history. They're going to try to find the cheapest labor possible. And they're going to try to enrich themselves and all of their friends. They are not your friends. They are not your buds. No matter how freewheeling and improvisational how they speak, they're fucking you in the ass. Hard.
So, like, just from a law perspective, when I took a corporate law class, I learned that the duty of the directors is not to the consumer, of course, it's to the shareholder. So if they get more money, who are they supposed to help? They're supposed to help the shareholder make more money. They're not supposed to help the consumer or the employee.
And within all of these cuts, the current administration has already gutted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're actively saying like, we don't want to protect consumers or their interests. You don't need to do these recalls for these defective products or for things that don't work the way that they should.
Yeah. A lot of what's going on right now requires some economic knowledge. I don't know if y'all took economics courses in high school or college, But I think it's funny to simplify it to that extent where Elon's like, all the inflation's due to government spending. It's like, well, no, I took micro and macroeconomics and I was actually really good at it for some reason. There are so many factors involved. And one of those factors is the price curve. And so the price curve is basically at what price do people stop buying your product? So you want to have enough product, right? And you want to sell your product. But you basically keep up ramping up the price until people stop buying enough. If people keep paying that price, there's no reason to drop that price. And that's why prices remain where they are, because people are paying the
People
price.
have needs. Hey, what if this is part
Right.
of RFK's plan to make America healthy again? That, food is so
Just
expensive.
don't eat?
Nobody can eat.
Everyone loses a bunch of weight because they can't afford to go buy more.
Well, then you can't afford gas, so everybody's walking.
Can't afford a car.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good for us. Yeah, we need to suffer.
That's what Elon said.
Yeah. As long as people are willing to pay the prices are going to remain high. And there's really nothing the government can do about it. And you can cut all these things. And at the end of the day, the company's got the duty to the shareholder. And if you're still willing to pay a lot, then they're going to charge a lot for their product.
Well, this is what I was saying during COVID when people were like, oh, this needs to end so the prices can come down. I'm like, you really think these companies aren't seeing like, oh, they still bought this stuff?
Yep.
I mean, how far down do we actually need to drop it?
Yeah, they're not going to be like, you know what? I care about the consumer and I'm going to be nice and I'm going to decrease the price. It's going to happen.
I don't know. If people want to keep on kissing Elon's feet, licking Trump's taint, they're not going to get anything for it. You might get a couple bucks off of your taxes, but that's about it. Your quality of life is not going to improve. Things are not going to get cheaper. You're going to have to delay a lot of expenses because you're not going to be able to afford them, because they've decided the rich get richer and they can continue to afford some of these things, right? That price curve. The people who can't afford them, need the things, will pay for them, and then everyone else will be left to fend for themselves, even if they can't afford it. This was one of the things that I read recently, was about how a lot of the metrics on how great the economy is doing isn't really reflective of how people are feeling, which is why the Democrats failed in their campaigning over the past couple of years. Like, well, the jobs reports are great. Unemployment is low. The index for what consumers buy is not really being affected. But it turned out there's some people who are doing these studies on these methods for picking up that information. The way that unemployment is calculated doesn't count for folks who've given up on the job market. It doesn't count for folks who are underemployed, who are working multiple jobs that don't pay them enough and are still struggling to make ends meet. It doesn't count people who work part-time. The unemployment numbers don't tell you how well people are doing financially. And on top of that, the metrics that they use to calculate what goods people are buying to determine the strength of the economy actually didn't really cover goods that most people with lower incomes did. It was more like middle class and upper class goods that people were buying. Those folks are doing fine.
Yeah. There's been some talk recently that Trump could get us to the point that we don't have taxes. And I want people to think about the logic in that. Sure, we could have no taxes. We could have no personal income tax. But what do you think is going to happen after that? If we don't have enough FAA air traffic controllers, people are not going to want to fly on planes unless it's safe. And the companies themselves are not going to want to operate if it's unsafe. So what are they going to do? They're going to run less flights. They're going to charge more for those flights. Yeah, education's going to get worse. So maybe you'll actually have to start buying a private education because public education is so bad. The roads are going to be terrible, even worse than they are now. More potholes, more damage to your vehicle, which is going to cost money. There's so many things that you don't think about. And I totally understand, like, it's painful for everyone, I think, to make this money and then see a lot of it go away. But at the same time, like, what do you think it's going to be like without that money going away? It goes towards things that better our lives. And at the end of the day, we're still going to pay for it because we're going to have to pay for more expensive things and damage to our vehicles and damage to our educations and even damage to our health.
Yeah, and people that have talked about this have even said like, oh yeah, you could have no taxes, but what they're really going to do is just implement a national sales tax. So everything's more expensive anyway. So even though you see that full amount on your paycheck, it's going to go to the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even get me started on tariffs.
Well, and I like to think about healthcare a lot. So I was reading about how Medicaid also funds probably all of our hospitals down in South Texas to some extent, because these are disproportionate share hospitals that basically don't have enough money because of the fact that they get a lot of people that come in that don't have insurance, and they provide care for them unfunded. So like imagine if that money gets taken away, or a large part of it gets taken away, then ultimately all of our healthcare is going to suffer.
Well, what can we do?
Well, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but we got to keep pushing back on the narratives, got to push back on the misinformation. We got to talk to people and figure out solutions. But I do think, like I said before, we can't just focus on some of the bad things that are going on. We also have to think about the solutions that will help everyone.
Yeah. Not everyone is the enemy. There are actually very few people who are the enemy.
Yeah, that's true.
And if someone's telling you that everyone else, or I don't know, half the country is your enemy, then maybe you gotta do some thinking about that.
I do talk to a lot of people that have different perspectives, different political ideas. And I feel like when you talk to people face to face, you can come up with a lot of solutions, a lot of compromises that make sense. And that's why we have to continue to talk to people and get out of our bubbles.
The moderate to society. Is that what you're saying?
Reintroduce like a moderate in terms of political views. I mean, I think I'm fairly moderate. I feel like I'm center left on some things and maybe a little more left on other things. But I feel like at the end of the day, I can compromise on a lot of things right at the center. I've even had situations where I've spoken to people about gun control, people that are very pro-gun and I'm very anti-gun. And we've come up with compromises and solutions that could make sense.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what can work.
Yeah.
We'll see if this pod is getting to people's ears, getting to people's hearts. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your friends. Talk to people who are not like you. Don't get into fights at your children's cheer events, for the love of God. You're a grown-ass adult. Talk to someone. Control your emotions. Jesus Christ. If you like what you're hearing, rate us 5 stars on all the platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. Keep on sending us questions, comments to casadecavasospod@gmail.com. We actually do have some questions in the pipeline that we want to consider very carefully and research a little bit. So those are on the way. We're going to be doing some more mailbag stuff soon. Hope to hear from you. See you soon. See you later.
Until next time.
Bye.